Ugh, working moms, you are going to want to listen to this interview. I have brought on my friend and executive coach, Stacy Mayer. She has been on this podcast before. She is someone that helps women get promoted. She helps women find that next job that they want to be in to like really up level their career. And so she has all of the tips and the strategies on what it takes to really move your career upward and forward and help women get to those director level jobs, VP jobs, C-suite jobs. And so she is giving us so much wisdom here today on the landscape of what it takes right now in 2025 to get yourself promoted. We talk about the energy that you need to be in order to get promoted. We get into some of the nitty-gritty on exactly how you actually need to get promoted and what it takes to do that. This is going to be an interview that you are not going to want to miss. I can't wait for you to listen. So let's get to it. Hello, ambitious working moms. I'm excited. I have my friend and executive coach, Stacy Mayer here. Say hi, Stacy.
Hello.
Stacy is a good friend of mine. She's been on the podcast a couple of times. And I told her recently, I was like, we got to schedule that annual podcast interview. I think maybe we didn't do it in the very first year that I had the podcast because I started it in March. But every year since then, we have had a conversation around what it takes to get promoted and to really go after your career in this year. And because you are all about that. And so I'm so excited to have our annual podcast talk.
Yeah. And it's so important because, I talk about intention is a huge part of it. And when we're all busy working and all the different priorities, like even the fact that you have that touch point once a year to say, hey, what's going on with your promotion, right? Ahead of time, not based on what your boss says, right? So this is like, there is definitely a reason that we do this once a year. I love it.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So tell us again who you are, just so everybody knows who you are, what you do, a little bit about yourself. You got 2 kiddos like me, so tell us a little bit.
Awesome. Well, I am a best-selling author of Promotions Made Easy, a step-by-step guide to the executive suite. I also have my own podcast, Women Changing Leadership. And essentially what I do is I help women get into higher level leadership positions on their terms. I want to change the face of the leadership table. I want more women in positions of power, influence, and to really get recognized. I use a lot of times like the recognition that they deserve, but sometimes that can be very frustrating. It's like, I deserve it, right? But it's like, no, it's that softer, more beautiful place that says, why not me? And that's the world that we're creating over here.
I love it. I love it. And I just really want to talk about like what it takes to move your career forward in 2025, man. We've had a regime change at the top here in this country, and it feels like a different landscape, and maybe it is, maybe it's not, but I'd love to hear, to just start our time as women think about maybe this is the year that they go for that promotion or they go for some shift in their career and kind of mobility up in some way. What are you seeing the landscape to be for women out there right now?
Well, the biggest thing that I'm talking about a lot more publicly, because it's necessary for people to know that I can actually help them, is with interview strategies. So I've been doing promotion strategies since day one. And then, a lot of my business was foundationally one-on-one coaching. So that's very private, right? So that's what the work that I do with the client itself. But then, you also have the marketing side and what you're talking about. And obviously my book is to help women get promoted. And a lot of the work that we were doing behind the scenes was always on interviewing, right? So whether they were interviewing internally or they were interviewing externally, it was happening for them all the time. Towards the end of 2024, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm helping so many women get interviews, actually get the interview and then get the offer and then get the offer of their dreams. Why am I not telling more people about this? Like, why am I keeping this to myself? It's not just about promotions. And I had, one-on-one coaching is a significant investment, both financially and time-wise and emotionally and all of these things. And I was like, wait a second, 60% of my clients are actually unemployed right now. That has never happened, right? So most of the women that I worked with prior to 2024 were in jobs, looking for other jobs or promotions, right? And they're willing to invest in coaching and to say, hey, even though, and actually part of the thing is that these women have set themselves up to be financially resourced. So they have a 6-month severance, or they have saved and they know that they have a little bit of space. And so they're like, okay, I'm going to do this right this time. Right. And so, so, in terms of trends, this is a horrible thing to say. There's a lot more unemployed humans on this planet right now. And it's specifically what I'm most proud of is that even though there is a lot of unemployed people, that there's also people within that who say, not only could this have happened for a reason, glasses half full, but I can actually turn it into something better, and I can create a better opportunity for myself in my next role. So that's one thing. And then, I'm happy to talk. There's like another part of that in terms of the strategy to get jobs as a result of that. But I'll pause there. See if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, because what I'm hearing you say in the landscape is like, yeah, there's more people unemployed. And when
Yep.
there's more people unemployed, that means there's more people searching for the same jobs, right? On the same, in
Yeah.
some way. And so that is the landscape of where we're at. And you're also saying at the same time, lots of people are getting their dream jobs right
Yeah.
now,
Yeah. hmm
and we, as coaches, I know that you talk with your clients, I talk with my clients a lot about, the circumstances never dictate your possibilities in your life, right? And we never want to kind of give control to our circumstances. We never want the idea that unemployment is higher than it has been in a long time, or that, however many hundreds of people are going for the same job, to be the circumstance that tells you not to go for it. Right?
Right. Yeah. Well, and I was just reflecting on this idea of no one talks about it. And I think that I wasn't talking about the interview process before, right? And then I had a woman who recently, so I mean, we worked for a year. So let me tell you her story. So she was a founder at this company, right? Came in, she was like number 6 employee or whatever. New leadership happened about a year later, and then she just completely got demoted. They hired like 100 people. The company grew. Her position got pushed down. Very, very frustrating path for her. So at the time that she hired me, it was, this is not what I'm talking about unemployment, right? This is just like the traditional promotion path that a lot of women find themselves in. They're like, wait, I've had 6 bosses in 5 years. This sucks, right? So we've been working on that for a while, trying to get her out of this director level role, which essentially she came in as a founder, and now she was like, being told what to do all the time.
Demoted on some level. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so we had been thinking about and interviewing, and then she got laid off. And so I had 3 women on, what was it? I think the first day back to work in January was like January 6th. 3 women texted me and said they were laid off that day.
Oh
And
my gosh.
she was one of them. And, she had been interviewing already and kind of thinking about it. But she was like, more importantly, like, I don't have a job. So I'm not saying, oh, I feel good about this, but I know how to get one. Right. So I've been working with you. We've been thinking about it. Like, I know what I need to do to get this job. And so the reason I'm sharing this story with you, though, is because she is now the chief business development officer at an organization. I think she started on March 15th. So this is huge, right? So she deserves it. She's ready for it. She is set up for this. She always wanted to be in the C-suite. And actually, we were talking about her first 90 days, and she was like, Stacey, I've done this job before. Right. So it's not even, and not the title, but the qualities of it. And she was like, I know how to do this. And so, when we say that women are getting their dream roles, like, it's not hypothetical, but why would, and I don't even think she has not changed anything on LinkedIn. Like, she got, some flowers from me or something, but like, nobody knows why. Because as women, it's embarrassing. Like, why would she be like, guess what? I got my dream role. And so if I'm not saying it, if you're not saying it, Rebecca, if we're not saying that this is possible, then add on to it this layer of like frustration, because we're all hiding. So even the people who are getting their dream role are hiding.
Yeah. Yeah. They don't want to promote. They don't want to promote it. They don't want to feel like they're like, they don't want to make anybody else feel bad. They don't want
Yes, of course.
to, they don't, yeah, all the things. Totally. You said something though that I think I wrote it down immediately, because I think this is where it's at. She was let go, And then she said to herself, she said it to you, it sounds like, but she said it to herself, I know how to get a job.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that is the most empowering, I think, feeling and thought to have in a moment like that, right? To not be a victim of circumstance, to not feel like you don't have options, but to say, I actually know what to do. And I can go as soon as I want a job, it's like a light switch. I'm going to go get the job because I know how to get the job. Like knowing how to do that is really important. And you're talking about something that I think is a piece of the how, because obviously you help women get promoted, you help people get these jobs, so you teach the how on some level, or you kind of walk them through the how on some level. But it sounds like a really important part of the how is the way you interview, because you've said that
Yeah,
a couple of
exactly.
times, and I wonder if the way people interview is like a landscape shift that's happening as well, and like the importance of that, and like interviewing today in 2025 is different than interviewing even last year or the year before that. And I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So one of the things that, in terms of the promotion path, that I'll remind people of is like, so they'll be like, oh, it's different now, or it's different for women. And when I first started, like, and created my 5-step process, I actually took it from successful white men who'd been doing it since the 80s. Right. So, like, the blueprint is there. If there are statistics for the last 20, 30 years that most of our job opportunities happen through second degree connections. This is very different mentality than what we think, which is first degree connections. Happy to share that with your audience, what I mean by that. But this is actually very known that most actual opportunities happen through second degree connections. This has been going on forever. But now what we have compounded to it is fear. Right. And so this fear is very different than the fear that we experienced collectively in 2020, which was like everybody was going through it. Right. Everybody was taking a pause. Everybody was reshifting. Right. But now it doesn't necessarily feel like everybody is. Right. So, you'll have like this quiet woman who's getting promoted, but she's being very quiet. And then you have a neighbor down the street that you hear got, let go. But then you might also have that couple that now they're both working from home and they're spending a lot more time with their family, and they have all this freedom, both financially and emotionally, and they're doing really well. And it's like everybody is going through a very unique circumstance. And so it doesn't feel like we have this collective whole to everybody's going through the crap. And so you do feel very isolated and fearful. And the first thing that we do when we're fearful is something that is, I use this term like being in the weeds a lot, but yeah, you did grasp, right? Grab. What do we grab to? What do we cling to? Indeed. The job search site.
Ah,
I am telling
I was like,
you,
wait a second,
Indeed.
Indeed. Oh, the job
Indeed.
site. Oh my gosh.
Indeed.com. LinkedIn. Oh my
Yeah.
God. And so what do? We scroll, right?
Yeah.
It's like we
Yeah.
scroll and we look at the number of applicants, and then we apply. And then we look at how 3,000 people applied within the last hour. And then we scroll. And then, right? So we're clinging, we're scared, we're very nervous.
Oh my gosh. My whole body just went into like despair. If that was me looking for a job, I would feel so defeated by that experience. If that was my job searching experience, wow. Okay. So my whole body
Yeah.
just went, woo. I'm so
Right. So
glad
we
I'm not in
can't.
that
So in that
situation.
sense, so
Yeah.
when we talk about like technology and like things like, Instagram and Facebook being thrown at us and things like that, and a lot of women have created tools so that they don't get sucked into this. I think that's actually where the difference is. So, interview strategies have always been about, in my opinion, relationships, right? You get the job of your dreams, especially if it's a skip level or a next level promotion type job opportunity. You're going to get it because you know somebody. Those VP level roles are all created at the President's Club. When I talk about, it's like the people we know at the golf course, at the friend of the friend of the friend, right? And so that's been going on for decades. But now we have fear on top of it. And then we're also being inundated with social media platforms and distractions that are telling us that this is going to be really, really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. What you're saying is if you want the next level job, don't go to Indeed.
Or let me tell you this, do both. And here's what I mean. So if you don't have your assets in order, like your resume, your LinkedIn profile, like these things are not up to date, which happens for a lot of women, especially who've been at their company very loyally for 25 years and then they got laid off. Like these women are, like I said, this one woman who was laid off, she was a founder, right? So this is not, there's, there's no discrimination in the layoffs, right? They're laying off everybody, right? So, especially if you haven't updated these things in a while. So, you need to be very well practiced at submitting a resume. This sounds so lame, but so many people. So, they'll either go all in, scroll, doom and gloom, or they'll avoid it, right? So, they say, I know that it doesn't happen through LinkedIn, so I'm not going to do anything, right? And their resume looks terrible. And so, what I do is I use it as a practice. So I think of these job applications as information. It's almost like you're practicing, you're experimenting through the application process. And in the meantime, last week you submitted 10 applications to jobs. So the technical thing is you do it. But what you're looking for is you're looking for opportunities to see what companies are hiring. You're seeing like what the hiring managers' names are. What are those keywords in your resume? It's much more experimental, much more playful, while you're reaching out to those same folks and having conversations or your connections and you're having real, and I say face to face, but I mean like on Zoom conversations with people. And so if you can look at the job search process on these traditional platforms as play, then you're not going to have that level of fear and despair, because it is really important when that executive that you've been afraid to reach out to them because they'll do you a favor in a heartbeat. Like I have this woman that's been milking her Boy Scouts, like all the parents, because she lives here in the Silicon Valley too. And these are she's like down in Palo Alto, very influential people, right? She's like, I know a lot of important people. I'm like, have you asked them that? She's like, no, I got to get my stuff together. I'm like, well, let's do that yesterday,
Yeah, yeah,
get
seriously.
it done,
Yeah.
because we got to start opening these doors for ourselves. But so that's something to think about. Like, are you avoiding it entirely? And maybe there's a different approach to it, because it's not the approach that says Indeed is going to give me the job, but Indeed is going to help me get my stuff together so that
Still a piece
then I
of the
can.
whole puzzle for sure. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you used a word that I think is the opposite of how people think of going after a new job, which is play,
Yeah.
playful.
Yeah.
And yet I have no
Totally.
doubt, because I know you make the process playful, because why else are we living life if we're not going to enjoy a piece of it? But there's a different energy when you approach, what tends to be, heavier, hard circumstances as being playful, as being like fun, as being like, I can try some things, as being, that having some levity to it, and kind of experimenting a little bit. I wonder what happens when I do it this way, or when I say it this way, or when I connect with somebody this way. Like there's a different energy about that puts you in the driver's seat of that, which is in what you're really are talking a lot about ownership. It's like, don't give Indeed, don't give LinkedIn like ownership over
Yeah.
your job search. Like take
Yeah.
it back. It's
Totally.
for you. Be in charge of this. So you've hinted at this idea that jobs really don't come from first connections, they come from second. So why don't you like clear that up for us?
Yeah.
Tell us what
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
mean
Yeah.
specifically by that. I mean, I think I know, but
I
let's
want
hear it.
to, I just had this image when you said playful too, because I think that our definition of playful is, unprofessional, like maybe authentic,
Oh,
but it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
doesn't actually get us the job. I was sort of thinking about my sassy daughter, like when she's sassy, right? When she says the thing, like my daughter is very good at being very clear and being like, no. And sometimes you're like, oh crap. But I could look at that and be like, that is actually playful, right? And it has this sort of energy. And a lot of the women, when they're being playful and having success, it looks like what I would call authentic power. So, my daughter's being very clear. And she's like, no, I'm not going to actually do that thing. And she's also powerful at the same time. And when we can show up like that in interviews, that can be very playful, like a lot of WTF attitude. I literally teach like how to do WTF, right? So if you can walk into interviews like I have nothing to lose, even though you've been unemployed for 6 months, you will be like miles ahead of the rest. And that can be very playful. Like you can come back to me and be like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I said that." Right. And it works. So I
So
wanted
good.
to kind of
So
address that.
authentic power is the way you're
Yeah,
describing that. It's like being in
yeah,
authentic power
exactly.
when you're playful. And I totally know what you're talking about with your daughter. I've been having these moments lately where Lillian will be sassy to me. Just it was like on our walk today. Like she runs hot. Okay, now I'm going on a side tangent here, but she runs hot. Like literally, I wear all the clothes and she is like never wears clothes. She's wearing the shorts and the t-shirt and I'm
Yeah.
bundled up. And I've
Uh-huh.
gotten to the point where I've stopped, like I don't make her put on anything at this point. But today she was wearing a sweater. She took it off mid-walk to the school and I'm like, "Lillian, she was like, "I just don't want it to be hot today." And I'm like, "It's going to
Mhm.
be 62 and it's going to rain." And she was like, "Mom, I am not like any other child. I run hot. And that's just me." But it was so sassy. And it was like,
Uh-huh.
"Mom, I'm just different. Okay." And it was like, "Okay, I gotcha." It was like powerful and sassy at the same time. Right. And so I know what that voice is. Like, I know what that means to be in that kind of authentic power, playfulness. So good. I love
It's
that
so
image.
good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So second, connections.
Yeah. So, I think maybe some people think that jobs come through in, the traditional application process. So first I'll acknowledge that. But I think if you really start to think about it, you're smarter than that. And you're like, I know it doesn't actually come through those applications. So then I'm going to reach out to my first degree connections. And so on LinkedIn, say, I'll connect with a colleague that I used to work with or an old boss, and I'll say, "Hey, I'm looking for a job, or I noticed that you have some job opportunities. Can you put in a referral?" And things like that. So those are actually the first degree connections. And what happens is those people aren't typically the hiring managers. They're not the person who's doing the hiring. And so even at a large company, if they put in a referral for you, yes, that helps you stand out a little bit, but not very far. Right. So that's the first degree connection. Wow, they did this really great thing. They put in a good word. I had one woman, they were actually like walking her resume around, the being like, "Hire this woman," or whatever. Like literally, I was like, "A piece of paper? Somebody actually did that?" And they're like, "Yeah, they put my resume on their desk." Like, okay, great. What I would like them to do though, is I would like them to put the resume on the desk and say, "Can you have 15-minute chat with her?" Right. So what you're doing is you're using the first degree connection to create a second degree connection. Right. And so the person who's actually hiring, the person who works at the company that you want to work for. And so when we have these really powerful connections, we sort of just let them come and go. And we just say, "Okay, that was it. They weren't hiring right now. That was, and it's like, well, but they know other people. And I think part of our brain is saying, "Well, if they knew someone, they know I'm looking for a job. If they knew someone, then they would introduce me." And the answer is like almost never. And I always think about myself. I mean, do I infer? Like sometimes not. Like I don't know that it's like I've got other things going on in my life. And unless someone says, "Hey, can you send an introduction to this person?" Then I'm, "Oh yeah, of course, sure." But I don't think about it, right? Automatically. Like I'm not thinking about them all day long, right? So you have to kind of tell me, prod me, and assume that I want to genuinely help you, right? And so when we're thinking, how do I get to this second degree connections? And that's the foundation of our job search, then we go into these first degree connection calls a little bit differently.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, and you're right. Of course, we know that as we think about it, right? We know that the what we're asking is our first degree connections to likely introduce us to somebody else, but we don't think about like so the path to a promotion is to move through the first degree and to get into the second to have conversation with the second degree connections and to show up powerfully in those spaces and that like it actually that does shift in your mind as you think about it.
Yeah,
What the whole
totally.
goal is, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh
Exactly.
my
And I
goodness.
think that a lot of times we're so grateful for our friends and our first degree connections that we actually don't want to burn any bridges. And I'm sort of thinking, well, what kind of friend are they that you're constantly worried about upsetting them? Most of these people that they're talking about are actual friends. And really the super influential people that, you're like, I think he would do anything for me, but I actually don't know him that well. Those actually are even better friends, better first degree connections, because that's how they got there. If they're very influential, they understand this relationship, and they understand that, and they appreciate clarity, and they appreciate someone who can be more directive. And if they're going to be putting you up for a VP level role, they really want somebody who can be very clear and directive to them about their job search.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. Okay, we've gotten into some nitty gritty. Let's recap for a moment. We've gotten into some nitty gritty about what it takes to, like, what the landscape looks like, and then some of the things that we have to be doing in order to be getting promoted, advancing forward, taking ownership, understanding the path forward, and recognizing that it takes a playful attitude. It takes you knowing, like, that you know how to get a job. Like, this isn't confusing. It's like we've had generations and generations of people that have gotten jobs before us, right? And so we know how. We just need to step into that powerful place. And so if we kind of like zero in on women right now, and this is what's starting to come up for me, because I know you and I share a lot of similar vision and goals to see more women in leadership, more women representation at the top. You do that through helping women get promoted and move their way up and get through all those barriers. I do it through helping women through the motherhood moment, because that's also a moment where we lose women out of the funnel of women up the top, so forth. So as I start thinking about wanting more women at the top, and obviously we're preaching to women here that are listening
Mhm.
to this podcast right now,
Yeah.
what's unique about being a woman getting promoted right now in today, and like their path up and remaining in leadership and getting up into the top?
So what's unique about, like, why would it be cool to have more women in leadership?
No, I want to hear more, like, if we were to talk about women in particular, like, what are they challenged with that you see that they need
Okay.
to overcome in order to get there?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I mean, when you first asked that, I was like, well, one typical problem that I hear for a lot of women, and maybe this will also speak to the challenge, is that they are definitely smarter than the people who are getting promoted around them. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
like, hands down. And like, we can always see it. And we're just like, oh my God, that guy is such a tool. I have a woman who, this guy who is her peer, who's clearly liked by her boss more than her, they're in the same band. They're
Uh,
in a band together. She's like, Stacy, how do I compete? I can't play an instrument. I was like, oh my God. So
okay.
this reminder that, we're typically, what will happen is, as women, will shut down because we'll be like, look, I can't play an instrument. I can't compete with this. I am smarter than him, but I'm just going to shut down, right? Because I don't want to play that game. I don't want to be a part of that, which makes a ton of sense, right? Like, I understand. I don't want to be a part of that either. I don't want to play that game. But if we remember what we're fighting for, is this idea that, oh, okay, I can not only bring my intelligence, but I also lead my team better. I have a different level of empathy and understanding, and being able to bring everyone up together. So we're not going to just pick the people that we play on the band with. We're going to have a bigger perspective once we get to the top. So this is huge, reminding women that they matter, that they belong in the C-suite, that we need them, right? And so, hey, okay, I get it, but how? And I have an approach that's called same, but better, right? So one of the challenges that we'll do and actually this was really funny, Rebecca. I said, my husband is Korean, and I said this approach, same, but better. And she's like, oh, my Korean mother says this all the time. And then it made me laugh. I was like, wait, does my Korean mother-in-law say this all the time? I don't
And that's
know.
where
I
you
don't know
got it
where I
from?
got it
Yeah.
from. I downloaded it somewhere, but yeah, it works. But she was like, oh, yes. So this idea of same, but better is that we skip from, I am smarter than you, and that what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how different I am. So either we recoil, we just say, I'm going to take myself out of the game, or we push on the difference, right? And what I recommend is pushing on the same, right? So not that we become same, so we don't lower our voice. I mean, these were like real techniques, the shoulder pads, how we dress, how we look. We could look like men or whatever, sound like men, lead like men. No, not that, but the actual sameness. So without changing ourselves, there is a way that we make decisions exactly like our boss. There is a way that we solve problems that is exactly like the CEO, but we're not talking about it. And some of it comes from we don't understand it or we haven't seen it or we don't really know. And so some of my coaching is pulling that out of them and really showing them, you've actually been doing this for a while. So not just like I hit my numbers, but then why were you able to hit your numbers? And so then they're like, well, because, the CEO gives us a directive and I follow instructions, right? Or whatever that might be. Okay, that's a big deal to tell somebody. Well, why would I tell them that? The CEO told me what to do. And like, well, no, tell people that you repeat what the CEO said, repeat how your ROI created the CEO's better results, right? So that's the same. And then there's always something that we do better than everybody else. And so I'll have clients that will say that they created some kind of better result. And this is something that the company's been working on for 10 years, never able to accomplish it. And so then I'll go into why were you able to accomplish it and nobody else did? And so then it's like the same, which is like, well, the CEO tells me what to do and I did it. Well, you could say duh, but nobody else was doing that. Nobody else was listening. Okay, so now I know how to be the same. I know how to listen. And then I took that into my own brain, my own unique thought process and turned it into a result. And so here you go. And so when you ask like this challenge, it's really understanding that over indexing with your difference first without the same, like I'm so much smarter, or like I'm going to go into an interview and talk about how great I am. And I had all of these results and maybe even say nobody was able to do that. You have to root it in, I want to work with this woman. Like I want her to, like, she seems like me, right? I can have conversations with her first, right? So we're recreating that sort of like band camaraderie, but just like that sameness. Like, look, I can play with you guys. And a lot of women really can. Like they want to be in the room with these men. Like they hold their own. They're amazing. But because they're over indexing on their difference, then they're actually isolating themselves even more.
Oh, interesting. Because we as women have sort of, it's been indoctrinated into us that success for us as women comes when we're this, we have to be equal but better, right? And so
Yeah.
in order to really be successful, we have to showcase the betterness of us on some level and over promote that. But you're saying what that actually does is it creates it. People don't know if they can relate to you.
Yeah,
Then and they don't
exactly.
know
And
if
so
they
then
can
we
like
get
work with
labeled as
you.
aggressive or like
Yeah,
a
exactly.
bulldog
Yeah.
or whatever. And the other piece is when we talked at the beginning about that this has been happening for, many decades. When you look at, like, I don't think that traditional women's leadership advice, old school 80s and 90s shoulder pads and stuff, was written because it didn't work. I think it actually did work. I think it did work to contort ourselves and to be more like a man, like to actually change. But it was rooted foundationally in change, right? So change yourself to be more like them. And I'm saying you actually all are already like them.
Already.
And when you,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
you just have to articulate it.
Yeah. And this makes me if I zoom back out again and I think about, more women at the top again, and we talk about that decade story. We're in a 60-year story, right? We're not that far into the story. And
Yeah.
of course it makes sense that when women decided, into the feminist movement and post-feminist movement to go after careers that were never given the chance for before, it made sense that what they just did what everybody else knew how to do, what the culture knew how to do to get a job, which was do it like a man, right? And do it in the same way. And now we're evolving to say that that's okay. That's a method that has worked. It doesn't feel very congruent with us as women and us as moms and us as human beings. And so now it's time to reinvent that in a way that feels really aligned with the human being that I want to be. So it's not. So, which I guess I say that because sometimes I can get into the like, why kind of that feminist feel of, screw them. We don't
Yeah,
want to be
yeah,
like
yeah.
that anymore. It's like, no, this was the natural evolution. Of course that's what we were going to do when we were finally given the opportunity to take jobs that we were never given opportunities to do before. And it's what the generation of people in the C-suite, what we saw them do, because we have barely had a generation of C-suite women. I mean, not only do we barely have them, but we've barely had a generation of them that have done it differently than men did it, because they were the first ones to have the opportunity, right? And so we haven't had enough example. We haven't had enough time go by where we have a generation of C-suite women that have chosen to do it differently and do it well in a way that feels really aligned with us as women. I think there's some importance in like remembering the history of where we're at today, and then being empowered to like choose a new path.
Yeah, totally.
So where do we go from here? I don't know. We've crossed we've gone all over the place. I love it. But
Yeah, yeah.
I do like talking about the women in particular, and kind of the window, or the insight that you have for
Mhm,
women that are looking to get promoted. It if we even go one deeper and we say moms,
mhm,
since
mhm,
that's who is the focus of this particular podcast. um, Moms like to think that their circumstances are different too. And
mhm,
just as we as women
mhm.
think our circumstances
I
are
think there's
different,
actual numbers though that they are different, right? Like there's
I
like,
mean, there's no
yeah,
question
women
that
with
they're
children are
different.
penalized more. Right. Yeah.
No question. And so
Yeah.
as you start to think about women in moms getting promoted, what starts to come up for you as you think about that in 2025?
Maybe listen to your kids. Like I have a lot of children with like teenagers. Because
Yeah.
maybe I don't know for sure, but because I've been going for my career with little babies at home and stuff like that. But I'll have some women with teenagers who are finally like, okay, I can figure out a way to have some space to go for my career. And oftentimes, especially the boys are like, Mom, what are you talking about? Like, of course you should apply for this job. Like, they will tell me
Mm,
this over and over and over
oh
again,
my gosh.
especially the
Yeah.
boys.
Yeah.
Like, what? Right?
Yeah.
Or look
Yeah.
at your daughters and say, would I want my daughter to back off on this? Would I want,
Yeah.
And so having that, like, it really is profound to me that I had a woman who, signed up for coaching in her second round of coaching while selling her house because she was going through a divorce and she had two young boys at home and she signed up for coaching. And so it's like there is something about that level of intentionality and saying me first, and I'm going to figure out a way to make this investment back and to, and whether that's through having a job that feels much more aligned or an opportunity that I get to really be in that leadership role in that position. So kind of knowing that you're worth it and that, I mean, these are reminders that sort of are like, why not me? Why can't I do this too? And the answer is yes, of course, of course. And, it really does spill into other areas of our lives. I mean, for me personally, it's kind of been because it has to. So if I'm going to go, there's this great body of work called the Energy Project. And what the founder talks about is that if we want to do big things, then we have to refuel our tank in a really big way, right?
Yeah. We have to have a bigger tank.
Yeah, exactly. And so, whereas most of us kind of live in that middle. So, like, we're like kind of do something and then kind of not, right? And so, this idea of putting ourselves in this leadership role, and for me, it's like as I continue to expand my business, I have to have more capacity to be with my children in a much more mindful, productive way. I cannot, like, it's like I become this asset. I think more about myself and how I'm showing up for them and how I'm taking care of myself. And did I shower? And did I put on makeup today so that I feel really good about myself? Am I exercising? Am I eating healthy? Because it's fueling my ability to be able to do this work that I want to do. And so we have the ability to do both, and it doesn't have to feel like hustle or strain, and it can also, even just the idea of knowing that we're going for this big idea of growth and challenging ourselves can lead to more growth and more positive challenge with our families. So that is 100% possible. And it's actually been much more available to me. When I'm phoning it in at work, you know what I'm doing? I'm phoning it in with my family,
Yeah, no
almost
question.
always.
I tell my clients that when you become a mom, the goal is twofold. It's not just about moving your career forward. It's about being the mom that you want to be and having the family life that you want to have. And when one of them is failing, they're both failing because they're a twofold goal that they both have to move forward. It can't be either or, it's both always. And so we have to show up at both spaces in the ways that we want to show up. Otherwise, we don't feel successful. You know, we feel like we're failing in life generally.
Yeah.
I know we got to wrap it up here because it's at time. So thank you for all your wisdom here today.
Thank you.
Can you tell once again the listeners if they're interested in getting in touch with you or learning more about what you do? What should they do? How do they get in touch?
Well, definitely go to Women Changing Leadership podcast with Stacy Mayer. Follow me there. And also, I do have a downloadable free interview strategy guide. So if you go to stacymayer.com/interview strategy, you can download that for free and it will give you that step-by-step process that we're talking about so that you actually know how to find your next role.
I'm going to put that in the show notes too. So easy ways to find all of that. So good. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your expertise. Thanks for all you're putting out into the world. I just love it. And I love these conversations. And I have a feeling we'll have another one in 2026.
Sounds great.
So
Thank
good.
you, Rebecca.
Thanks again. All right, working moms. Till next week, let's get to it. The next step to getting unstuck and having more days where you bounce out of bed feeling certain that you're doing exactly what you want to be doing, regaining your confidence, ending all of that negative chatter in your head, is to book a free breakthrough call. This is a strategy call where I will guide you through setting a vision for the life that you want to lead as a working mom, and then I'll lay out a plan for exactly how we will achieve that together through one-on-one coaching. You can book that call by going to RebeccaOlsonCoaching.com/book. All right, working moms, let's get to it.